Hey everyone, Luke the editor here. Jacques' story in this episode is very powerful, and we encourage you to listen if you are able. That said, there are some graphic descriptions in this episode that some listeners may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Take 2 Minutes podcast. I'm your host and founder of Take 2 Minutes, Mark Fassel. Joining me this week is Jacques Delorme. Jacques is a science educator, public speaker, life coach, and author of Driving Out of Darkness, Self-Care Strategies for Trauma Recovery. After experiencing a traumatic car accident, Jacques created his own self-care recovery process, which he now uses to help others. For the past 12 years, Jacques has dedicated his life to personal development, undergoing multiple training courses. His deep interest in public speaking and supporting others through the concepts taught in his book makes him a valuable resource for anyone recovering from trauma, dealing with someone who is or looking for ways to manage their own mental health struggles. Jacques, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on.
Well, thanks for having me.
Jacques and I were talking, and he has been on a few podcasts as of late, so he should be a pro at this. But we're going to ask with the question you're probably asked on all the podcasts, which is, why don't you start by telling your story and what happened and what led you to creating your own self-care recovery process?
Yeah, well, it's interesting how the unexpected can really turn your life upside down. And that's what happened to me. I never had anything really serious other than maybe a divorce, which is considered to be quite painful. But being in a serious accident isn't something that's ever happened to me. So I didn't know really how to deal with it. And when it actually happened, 2.5 years ago, it'd be October of 2021. So it's post-COVID era. It's October, so it gets dark quite early. I'm on the number one highway in Canada, which goes across the country. High-speed highway, dual lane. So for us, it's 120 kilometers an hour driving. So comparable for the US, it's about 75 miles an hour driving. Like you call it one of your interstate highways, for example. So I left middle of the afternoon, traveling east towards another province, towards Manitoba, going to Winnipeg. Got into Manitoba. It's now 8 o'clock at night. There's a time change. So for me, it's 7 o'clock and I'm starving. I need food. So I pulled to the left-hand lane because there's a gas station on the north side of the highway across the double lane. The lights are on, but I don't see anybody walking around and there's no vehicles. So I'm thinking, well, this place is probably not open because in Saskatchewan, everything in that time of the year with COVID, everything shut down at 7. Nobody's open. So I'm thinking, it's probably not open. I'll just continue on. Highway curves slightly downhill and to the right. And I never saw him in time. 24-year-old guy on a pedal bike was in the middle of my lane and I can't avoid him. So I hit him going 75 miles an hour, dead center of my car. His body comes up over top of the hood of the car, smashes into my windshield and bounces up and over and lands somewhere in the highway behind me. My windshield's destroyed, flying glass into the car, and I have no way of seeing where I'm going. So I use the left-hand side of the highway to see where I am and hit the brakes hard and come to a stop. Hit my flashing lights to warn anybody that's coming up from behind me, and I dial 911. In the conversation with her, I have my emergency first aid training. I've had it for years because I'm a longtime coach. So I said, well, I can't just sit here. And his body is somewhere. I don't know if he's alive. I need to do something. So she agrees, and I start walking back. It's pitch black. It's a moonless night. Contributed to me not seeing him, right? So all I had is my headlights. I have a little bit of light from the gas station. That's probably a quarter mile back, give or take, about this at this point, by the time I stopped. I have just enough light to see where he is. The light on my phone's useless. I can't use that for anything. So I can just make him out. I get to the side of the highway across from where he is. He's lying along the dash line in the middle of the highway, his head facing oncoming traffic, and he's motionless. I call to him, nothing. The lady that I'm talking to on 911 warns me, do not go out there. I'm wearing a dark blue golf shirt and blue jeans. Now I'm not visible by any means. I don't have anything that's a reflector. I have my phone, but that's not a light bright enough to really warn anybody that I'm out on the highway. She warns me not to go out there, so I don't. I stay where I am. And it's a good thing she did that because it's not even a minute goes by, a vehicle comes around the curve. It's a mid-size SUV. Comes around the curve. And I'm thinking, perfect. I have somebody to help me. We can help cordon off the highway, warn people there's an accident, and we can wait for the police to arrive. Unfortunately, same thing happened to them that happened to me. They didn't see us. And the instinct you have when you're driving is to never hit something with your tires. Because if you hit something, you could lose control and you get into an accident. So you do one of two things. You swerve to avoid it, or you swerve to take it between your front tires and let it pass under the vehicle. It's a lot safer, and then you won't wipe out your vehicle. I don't know why they chose what they did. They swerved left. They took the body between the front tires. Unfortunately, it's a mid-sized SUV. There's no clearance for a human body under a mid-sized SUV. So highway speed, didn't even brake, barely swerved in time to not hit the guy with their tires. Ran him over going full highway speed. And you can hear the body clunking under the chassis as it's going over. And thanks to laws of physics, takes his body from being like this and rotates it 180 degrees and launches him headfirst down the highway like an arrow. And it just grabs his body and launches him. Body goes up about 7 feet in the air. It's a little bit higher than the height of the SUV and about 50 feet down the highway. Just launched him with a lot of speed. Body eventually hits the concrete, lands, hits concrete, rolls, and stops across the right-hand lane. The SUV, a little bit further down the highway, obviously at this point, hits the brakes for about 3 seconds and leaves. Never saw them again. They left.
Oh my God.
They just freaked out. They panicked and they left. So I'm in shock at this point, just not really knowing what just happened and what to do. I'm kind of aimlessly walking back towards my car at this point. And the 911 operator, I do a play-by-play for her as this happens, and she's in shock. She stops talking. So it's just like, whoa, okay. Just not something you hear happen, right? So she doesn't know what to say. She eventually comes back on and says, get back to your car. You're not safe where you are, especially where the body is now. If somebody swerves left, where am I standing? I'm in danger of putting myself at risk. So I start walking back to my car. Not even a minute goes by. A lot of noise from behind me and a lot of lights. Semi with a flatbed trailers coming around the curve. And I'm waving, screaming, trying to get their attention. That doesn't do any good. He's not going to move a vehicle that big, that fast to be able to avoid something in the highway. Especially with seeing my car with flashing lights, seeing me waving on the side of the highway. It's a lot of information to gather. And no fault of it to him. He has no idea what's going on and he doesn't see the body. Driver's side tires take the body across the pelvis for collision number 3. So when the front tires hit his body, flipped his body sideways. So he didn't get run over by the rest of the tires, like all the tires of the trailer and the rest of the semi. Just the front tire got him, but still hit him. Flipped them sideways back to the center line, and he hit his brakes. I got back to my car, got in. He had stopped up a little further up from where my car was. I could see his flashing lights kind of reflecting through my broken windshield. Police eventually arrived, and not that long later, we weren't far from an RCMP detachment, which is only a few miles down the highway. So they were there quite quickly. Cordoned off the highway, I got out of my car to greet them and the EMTs. The semi was gone. He'd left. He had stopped originally, but never stayed. He left as well. So neither one of them stayed. I was the only one that did of the 3 vehicles that actually hit him. And if my collision didn't kill him, the second one absolutely would have, because there's no clearance. It would have taken, especially when he's head first, the vehicle would have hit his head, broke his neck, broke his skull. Then he would have perished at that point pretty easily. So I don't know if my collision did do the damage or not. I hit him, obviously, but I don't know if my collision killed him or not. That's just something I now live with. And now I start looking at, okay, now what? I'm in the middle of another province, 4 hours drive from home. No way of getting home, no way of getting anywhere. My car's destroyed. It's not going anywhere. It's leaking fluids because of the accident itself. And what do I do now?
Especially after witnessing and going through all that. I don't know. When I read about you, I didn't expect that story. I don't believe that is definitely something you would have to take time to recover from, witnessing and experiencing and taking part in, without a doubt. I could see. So tell me how did it affect you initially?
After the initial collision, it's shock. It's like what just happened and how did I not see him in time? How could I not avoid him? That's the things that first start running through your brain, right? Is how could I have done something differently? It's the what if scenario your brain does. What if I left home sooner? What if I'd stopped to get food? What, maybe he would have been gone by that point. Maybe this SUV or the semi would have hit him because I was stopping for food and I wouldn't have been involved. I would have just been there after the fact, right? But the part that I had to realize very quickly is that all the what ifs in the world don't do any good. Like, it doesn't do me any good. All it does is beat myself up.
Right.
And saying, okay, why couldn't I have been better? I just beat myself up thinking, okay, I had to be better. I am better than that. I should have been able to avoid him. In reality, due to the science, I'm a science geek. So I especially with physics, right? I did the calculation on it. It takes 3/4 of a second for the human mind to register what you're seeing. It takes another 3/4 of a second to physically act on what you see. So it takes 1.5 seconds to recognize it and do some sort of motion to avoid it. So for me to hit the brakes or just swerve my steering wheel, it takes 1.5 seconds. At the speed I was driving, guess how far I would have actually driven? 160 feet.
Okay.
What are the chances I'm going to avoid him?
Right.
Forget
Very
it.
little.
Right?
Yeah.
It is physically impossible for a human to react that fast. You need way more lead time to be able to see them and then be able to react to try to avoid them. Right. So it was not even close. So the police said the same thing. And it's the second one they'd had on this highway in less than a month that happened. 2 different cyclists had been killed. Mine was the second one. Yeah. And he said, there's no way you could have avoided him. It's just an unfortunate accident and don't beat yourself up. He goes, there's nothing you could have done to avoid him. If it wasn't you, it was going to be somebody else. Reality. Because we found out just by the evidence that we had, we kind of figured out why he was there. The cover of my book has a photo, which is the snapshot of what I saw immediately before I hit him. And that's just etched in my brain. I keep seeing that same image, right? Your brain, when it's under a lot of stress, will pick up 10 times more information than it normally does. So you pick up minute details. I could tell you every single detail of what he looked like before I hit him, even though it's just a split second. I have details of everything. Color of his shirt, color of his bike, the color of his sweats are black, his a dark navy blue shirt, zip up sweater with a white long sleeve shirt underneath. So you could see it peeking out the bottom of his sweater, right? Short, dark hair, face 45 degrees away from me, head down, never looked at me, and he wasn't pedaling. What does that tell you?
That's a lot of details you have in your brain about that situation.
Yeah. But all of that together tells you, well, human nature is what it is, right? If you're riding a bike and you're trying not to be hit, what's the first thing you do? You look back to see what it is that's coming at you, try to avoid it, and you pedal like crazy to get out of the way. He did neither one of those 2 things. So from what we could tell, he came off the left-hand shoulder with me being in the left-hand lane, really set it up for him really well. Because if I was in the other lane, it's a lot harder. I was in the lane closest to him. He's on the shoulder, coasted over in front of me, committed suicide. He was killing himself. There's nothing I could have done to avoid him because he was there intentionally to make that happen.
Actually, you can make all kinds of speculations. You would think that someone who is riding a bike in dark would have reflectors on, flashers on. I mean, in my area, when people are riding bikes, you see all these little flashing lights on them quite often. So you have some knowledge. When there's someone who's completely dark like that, I'm always astonished that they are riding their bike. And nonetheless, on a highway where 75 miles.
You can't see anything. You see nothing.
Right.
You can't. How does he see where he's going?
Right.
He can't. Right? There's no light other than the gas station. There's no light. It's all predestined by him. He had the perfect scenario to make sure it happened.
Things were going through my mind while you're telling the story. And I'm someone who tries to be prepared for things, even though you can't be prepared for everything. I try to be as prepared as I can. I do carry flashers in all my cars. All my vehicles have flashers. I have multiple light sources on all my vehicles. I think we all have first aid kits in all the vehicles. And I'm not talking the small little ones. I'm talking like a good sized first aid kit. We have them in all of our cars. And not that would rectify any of this, but when you were telling the story about how you had no way to signal to oncoming traffic, I was like, I was thinking to myself, I'm glad I carry those things, even though it's not a substitute for what happened, or would necessarily, if you would know even change anything. It just was thoughts going through my mind, listening to the story, because it is definitely a horrific story. Did you struggle to, I mean, right now talking to you, you seem like a well put together person. Did you have definitely, I would assume, some time, some months, years, whatever, and it was only a couple of years ago, so months or a year, where you really struggled with it? It was hard to get back to a normal lifestyle?
Yeah, the immediate response that your brain starts to do, having done a lot of personal development over the years, like your preamble before the show talked about me being in personal development for 12 years. Yeah, I started a long time ago. 2012 is when I started personal development and just working on me, working on my mindset and all of those things. That helped me do some pieces of trying to do my recovery, but it really didn't prepare me for how intense it was going to be. Because your brain starts to go completely off the wall. My stress level on a scale of 1 to 10, every single day was a stress level of 6 or 7, constant, and never changed. It was like that every single day. I just couldn't get it to stop. And that was one of the larger struggles, is trying to find some way of stop. Even the most simple of little things was a trigger. Anything that added stress at all, that for somebody to be like, oh, that's pretty minor, for me was catastrophic. It took me from a 7 to a 10. And my first instinct is, I want to hide. I want to get away. I need to do something to stop the pain. I want to go home and crawl under the sheets of my bed and just hide, go into a cave. And part of that reaction led to what I did is I didn't tell anybody. I told those closest to me, my family. I told a couple of close friends, people I could confide in. I had a life coach who helped me with doing some training to try and get through it. I talked to a psychologist, but I didn't tell anybody else for a very long time. It was 10 months before I started telling anybody, because I had that fear. And it's just, I knew I needed to get it out, but it's the fear of being labeled a killer that drove me to not. I couldn't. Right.
And I have some specific questions I want to ask around your strategies you discovered and what you teach others. But before we get too far into that, have you found that talking about it now actually helps more?
Absolutely. Oh no, once I started the process of actually having the story come out, I started writing my book 10 months after the accident. It was the end of August. After the accident, it was almost 11 months after I started writing it, wrote it in like 30 days. I did some fine tuning, tweaking to it. And by February 1st, I had self-published and it was released. So it got together really quickly once I got going, but it was a tough haul to go through the first part of it, to go through the accident piece, which happens really early in the book. It's one of the first things I actually get into. I do a little preamble really quick, and then by page 30, the accident's happened. So it's a really quick bang in your face sort of mentality with it. And like you said, it's pretty gory. It's graphic. And it gets people's attention, but I put them into the mindset of what I was going through when I wrote the book. I do different pieces of putting a snapshot of what my brain was doing. Every 3 paragraphs, I put in this little paragraph of here's what my brain did, to give my readers a feel for here's what it actually was like to be me in the middle of that. Okay. And now, what do I do to get through it? So starting the process of talking with my book helped a lot. And it wasn't until the following year, it took me almost another year after that before I actually started doing anything public speaking wise. I knew once I started writing the book that one of the best ways for me to do my healing process, write the book and start talking about it, but start to have a process in place for me to move forward and not look back. And that had to happen. I had to stop looking backwards. And that's where people get stuck. They get stuck in living in the past, stuck living in that accident and that same feeling and constantly reliving it again and again and again. And it just beats you up. And I had to stop that from happening. So I did some things with my life coach and everything, and my psychologist, to try and get through pieces of that. And I made a decision in December, after I'd basically gotten done writing the book, that I was going to become a life coach and start to teach others what I learned from what happened and do something positive from a really ugly situation. Somebody's dead after what happened. So I didn't want that to be in vain, as they say. It'd be a waste. I wanted to actually having gone through that, okay, what can I teach people? What can I show people that even though you go through something really horrific, there's a way of getting through it and get out the other side and become better for it in the end of the day.
Let's take a moment to promote you a little bit. Where can people find your book? And we're going to cover this again at the end, but I want to cover it right now real quickly. Where can people find your book?
I self-published, and it was actually quite easy to do. It didn't take me very long, and I'm on Amazon. So It's both as a Kindle book, so it's an electronic version. It's also in paperback, and it's found anywhere in the world. Like Amazon's covers anywhere. Yeah, it's in the US, it's in Canada, it's in Europe, it's wherever, right? Yeah, it's all available. Barnes & Noble also has it in the US as well. If people prefer that rather than Amazon, some people like one or the other. It's fine. Yeah, either way, you can find it. It's pretty easy to find. Driving Out of Darkness, and it's my name, obviously Jacques Delorme, as the author.
And then what for your coaching practice? Where can people find you for that?
That's something that, from a business perspective, I'm concentrating just on speaking.
Okay.
But the one thing I have offered is I am not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a certified counselor. So it's not medical advice I would be giving anyone. But if somebody wants to have a conversation, I'll never say no. Okay. They come have a simple conversation on, okay, what do you find it works? What else? Here's my situation. Here's what I've tried that doesn't seem to be helping. Is there something else you know that might help from your experience? And it's from a lived experience perspective, because I lived it.
Right.
A lot of counselors you have, psychologists, have not experienced trauma, but they coach it. But it's from a very clinical perspective where it's a book theory. It's not somebody who actually lived it. So my experience is significantly different.
You talk about some of the key strategies you discovered during your recovery and you've implemented that you teach others now?
Yeah, I do. The one that I don't teach it, though I'm looking at being certified in, it was one of the very first things I did, is actually through the life coach that I've seen. She was recommended by the real estate coach I was trying to go see in Winnipeg. I was actually going for a real estate session the next day on the Thursday. It's a Wednesday night accident. I was supposed to meet him Thursday in Winnipeg. I never made it. But his life coach is somebody he linked me up with, and she put me through something called neuro-linguistic programming. And basically what it is, it's the way of talking to yourself and using communication and visualization in your own mind to come to terms with something that happened. For me, it was the ability to stand above the accident scene from a 10,000 foot view, looking down at what was happening, and my body would start to react. And that was the part I was struggling with the most from a trauma perspective, PTSD. I kept going back to the accident and having the same feeling, the same emotional response, so a physical and emotional response to what happened over and over and over again. Every time I got triggered. And a trigger was like next to nothing to do. It was easy. It was happening several times a day to trigger me back into that state. What I needed to do is break that so my brain would stop triggering and put me back into that state all the time. So I needed to control my central nervous system. And one of the things I found is that 10,000 foot view, I would start to get triggered. I would stop, take a step away, physically move away in actually standing in a room, physically move away and then calm down. Okay, come back, try it again. Try and see how far you can see the view. Okay, stop, no, too much, back away, reset, come back, try it again. Do that for like an hour. And then over the span of several sessions, it got to a point where instead of a 10,000 foot view, I was down to a few hundred feet. I was down to 50 feet. I was down to standing beside my car after the accident, being able to see the body, be able to see what happened and not reacting anywhere near as bad as I was before. I still feel it when I had to do the description and I have the whole emotion of everything that happened. I describe it. I still feel it within me, but it's not a panic. It's not like it used to be. My heart rate doesn't change. My blood pressure doesn't change now anywhere near what it used to. A little bit, because I can still feel that little bit of stress, but it's not to the extent that I can't talk about it. Right.
Is that, so I think in your book, you discuss self-care strategies for trauma recovery. Is that one of them?
That's one. Yeah. Be able to get the help you need. It doesn't matter that we're men. We don't like to ask for help. But in reality, you need to get help. You need to talk to someone, right? I found that helped for me to start the process. But the reality of counseling is, how often do you have appointments? You don't have them every day.
Right.
Right. So you're going to go a week by yourself. So that's where I had to learn very early on, even with doing the sessions. What am I doing for me? What am I doing to settle myself down? I started learning how to use breathing techniques, something called box breathing. Helped a lot, right? To calm down my central nervous system. That was my number one key right off the hop. So neuro-linguistic programming started that, but in between, I was doing a little bit of that, but I needed the coaching to help me get through those pieces. So I was using breathing a lot to calm down my heart rate, calm down my blood pressure, and to settle my mind down so that I was more mindful. I call it mindfulness, being present in the moment and not living in that past, right? Be able to live in the here and now. And as I got better at that, I was able to really settle my mind down. And I was doing it every night before going to sleep and every morning when I get up, at minimum. And then during the day would be doing other pieces too, like doing the visualization, doing the different perspectives I learned how to do, and the other techniques too that I kind of wrap up into it. But breathing early on helped a lot to try to calm myself down so I could start to rationally think. Because when your brain starts to go into overdrive, you collapse. Your brain just goes, and you got to learn to control it, control your mind. Your mind doesn't control you. You control your mind.
Right.
And that's the part I had to learn.
You said a few things there. I took a few notes. I want to touch on a few of them. You said that as men, we don't like to ask for help, and I that was an interesting statement, because I was on a podcast just a few weeks ago that we were talking about just that, about what men should be now, and I was vocalizing that I think it's okay to have more feelings. It's okay to have more emotions. It's okay to ask for help. I think the men of 30 years ago are different from what they should be now, and I think the times have changed a bit where it's more okay. And some people don't believe it is, but I think it should be more okay to ask for help or to realize you need help. There's a lot of people with anxiety and depression, and probably a lot of people with trauma and PTSD who need help, and they need to be able to ask for it. They need to feel comfortable and safe asking for help and finding the right help for them. And I think it's terribly important for people to have some sort of confidence, or others like yourself and me telling them it's okay to ask for help.
Yes. And part of the fear of that is the stigma, right? And we know that society's stigma, the alpha male persona that is pervasive in society. And there's still people who believe that, no, men need to man up. Men need to be the stoic ones. They need to be the ones that control the household. The whole archaic John Wayne, James Bond portrayed in movies, that they have no emotion. They don't show emotion, right? All that sort of thing. That is the way of the past. Like when you have your suicide rate as being a 4-to-1 ratio male to female, 80% of suicides are male. There's a reason why it's happening, and reason why it's gotten so bad, especially after COVID, because we got isolated with COVID, and suddenly we're really not talking, and mental health just went out the window. Like it was bad after COVID.
So it did. Yes.
So much, so isolated, and where people weren't talking, and it created such a havoc. Now trying to get help is hard. Trying to get in to see somebody, it's a long wait to try to get in. And that's where I see, from my own perspective, having been through it right at COVID time, that I got lucky. I found a psychologist fairly quickly, but it didn't last long because my health coverage covers $400 a year.
Oh my gosh, that's
$175 an hour.
Yeah.
I went for 3 sessions. I'm done. I'm out of my pocket for it, right? My coverage doesn't cover that. Right? I went through neuro-linguistic programming. It's called holistic medicine. It's not covered under insurance. That's out of my pocket. It cost me a bundle to get some help. But it's either the money or it's my life.
Right.
Because if I go into a deep depression, having been there once before and being semi-suicidal back in the day, 10 years ago, I know what that feels like, and I will not go back. So I fought it. I fought it hard. So I learned how to talk, learned how to do those things with specific people. And that's the advice I give to men. It's like, you don't need to tell everybody. That's
right. I was going to say that.
Yep. We are not saying that. That's not the message, right?
Thank you for saying that. I was going to bring that up next. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
Find that one person. Find that 2 people that you trust with your life who would never say anything. confide in them. Start the process of being able to get it out, because it's that pent up energy, that pent up anxiety and depression that leads to trouble. If you can start to get that out, it's a whole lot less likelihood you run that depression to the point of being suicidal. Right?
Yes. And I'm so happy you said that. And I want to restate it for anyone who is listening, because that is important. You don't have to tell everyone. Tell someone, find help with one person, and start there and just take baby steps. You have to announce it to the world by any means. You also mentioned a couple things as living in the present and breathing. And I think breathing exercises can help often you focus your attention on the present. For me, I know if I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety, a good breathing exercise, focusing on my breathing, can help return my focus to the present, or return it to the breath, which is happening in front of me, and can help me relieve some of that anxiety, because you're focusing on one thing which is happening right now, which is your breath. And there's all kinds of breathing exercises you can find. There's dozens. I think Take 2 Minutes, the service I have, has maybe 15 available on it. Breathing exercises are guided for you. And so if you don't like one or two of them, keep trying, and maybe you'll find one you do like. Maybe you like them all. I don't know. I've tried probably 12 or 14 myself, and I've enjoyed various aspects of different ones, but there are many different methodologies of breathing exercises, and they can be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you define resilience, and why is it crucial for overcoming traumatic or challenging or stressful events?
One of the things that's going to happen is you will be tested. Your brain's going to test you. People are going to do things that'll trigger you. So you're going to go through constant tests of how persistent are you willing to be to get better? What are you willing to go through to get to the other side? And I got tested a lot, especially early on, where it's like, I just know I can't tell that person. Like they're triggering me, but I can't tell them why, because I'm just not ready for that yet. So it's a test for you in yourself on, okay, what do I need to do to, settle down, calm down. They don't know, wasn't intentional. So relax. And if you're not willing to tell people, you need to be able to find a way to be persistent that, yes, I will get to the other side. And no, I do not want myself going through that depression, and have a reason, have a why within your life as to where you're going. That why becomes critical. Like I read a book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. Fabulous book. Highly recommend it. Read that on looking for what is your purpose? What is that reason why you do things? That why is what keeps you going. From my why was my kids. My kids is the whole reason why that suicide was not an option. And I took that out of my mind way back 10 years ago. That no, I don't want my kids growing up without a dad. They need me. So I need to be stronger. I need to be better. So I work on it for them. I have a reason. That's my why, is to get to the other side. Now, part of my why is I want to be an example for what can happen to somebody who goes through what I went through. Be an example for others to say, yeah, I didn't collapse. I didn't drop into that depression. I have my why beyond just my family. I have the why to be that beacon for others to like, look, if I can get through what I went through, is the stuff you're going through really that bad that you can't get through it, right? Other people will experience some really bad trauma. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying mine's the worst, not by any stretch. I've heard of some ugly ones and people I've spoken to, but you can get through it. There is a light at the other side. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, as the expression goes. You just have to strive for it and just keep going. Keep going every day. If you improve 5% a week, that 5% compounds and gets bigger and gets bigger, and you do get better. It's not going to happen overnight. It took me months before I actually got to a point where I could talk about it with somebody. Like almost a year, right? And a year comparatively for something as severe as what I went through is actually a pretty short period of time. There's those who are telling me this is going to be a really long haul for you. Be careful what people tell you. That's one of the things I talk about in my book is do it for you. Do it at your pace. What somebody else says their experience was and how long it took them is completely irrelevant, because no two people will react to the same thing in the same way.
Correct. Yeah.
It takes one person 3 years to get through the struggles they're going through. It takes somebody else 3 months. You don't know. You don't know how long it's going to take you. You just keep going and get better every single day. You'll have days that are bad. I still have those once in a while, right? And even though it's been almost 3 years, it'll be 3 years in October. It's still a struggle of some days where it's like I fall backwards. Yeah, okay, I fell backwards one step. I'll take 2 steps forward tomorrow. And it's okay. It's called the cycles, right? You go through.
Commonly, depression is focusing on past events, whereas anxiety is worried about future events. With your situation, do you think you were more? You mentioned both depression and anxiety. Do you think you had more of a concern for depression afterwards because it was an event in the past you were focusing on happening or happened?
Well, it's the stigma behind someone died and just being labeled a killer. Which that is something very early on. I was very careful in the language I used if I ever described what happened. Now I use that word killer intentionally because it gives that a certain persona with the way people think, right? So I'm forming a TED talk that I'm creating and I use that word in the title. And it's intentional to get people's attention. Okay. And then I'll talk about that as part of my talk I will do about why that word is a stigma I don't want. Killer implies premeditated. Was what happened with me premeditated in any way? No, it wasn't. I didn't intend on that to happen, not by any stretch. He did. I did not. So to label me a killer is inaccurate. And I don't use that word for that purpose. It's like, no, I'm not a killer. I'm somebody who was in an unfortunate accident and someone died in it. He had his choice. He made his choice. He used me to do it. At the end of the day, wasn't my fault. And as soon as I started to ingrain that some more, that no, it's not my fault. I can move forward from this because I didn't cause it. I was a part of it, but I didn't cause it in the end. And just having a difference in mindset. That's starting that shift in mindset to get away from the blame, get away from drilling myself as being a bad person because of what happened, when in reality, I didn't do anything wrong.
I touched on depression and anxiety a moment ago, and you mentioned mindfulness earlier. Can you talk more about the role of mindfulness and how it can help individuals control where their mind goes during difficult moments?
The biggest problem we have is, you talked about it, the timeline piece, right? Anything to my left is the past. There's your depression. The present moment, being mindful, being in the present moment, and then the future of being anxious of, okay, well, am I going to be able to get through this, and having the doubts of where I'm going. For me, what I started doing besides the breathing was meditation and doing journaling. My journaling had something very specific as a part of it that I found really worked. I'd always write in the morning. I'd never look at social media in the morning. I'd never look at my phone. Put it down, leave it away. Like, don't touch on the news, don't touch social media. So much negativity, and it's just not the way I could start my day. My days always started badly as it was. I needed to find a way to start better. So I'd start meditation first, breathing techniques first to really calm down, get into the moment, into my mindfulness, and then start writing going, today's a really great day because why?
So some gratitude journaling almost, or finding positivity in the morning, correct?
Yeah, always. Because I had to start my day on a positive note. Yep. Early on, after the accident, I never started on a positive note in my day, and my day would just go to hell in a handbasket, as the expression goes. It would get really bad. And that was a problem. So I had to control what my mind was doing. So I started very early in my day and started with that and just build on it as we go through the day. Proven fact in research, you cannot be grateful for something in your life and be in a negative state of mind at the same time. So part of my journaling was pick 5 things I'm grateful for and just mix it up and do different things. It could be something really simple. Smell of coffee.
Right. Yeah.
It was raining last week. The smell of rain. I love the smell of rain. I like the sound of thunder, right? That's what I'm grateful for, the fact it was a thunderstorm, right? Even though it's tend to be something a little bit more negative because it can be destructive, but for me, it was something I was very grateful for. I love that. I like the way that sounds, I like the way that smells, right? And it always puts you into that really mindfulness in the moment, positive in the moment, to start your day off really well. And this is what I'm looking forward to in my day, is future thinking, which is why I did it. You can't be thinking about the past all the time. The past cannot be changed. What it is, it's just simply a part of who I am. The accident is part of who I am now. That's my reality. I'm not trying to ignore it. I'm not trying to use hypnotism. One person recommended that. Do hypnosis and just delete it. Yeah, that doesn't work with the human mind. It's going to come back, and it'll come back in force. And I haven't dealt with it. I need to deal with it. I'm not willing to hide it. I don't hide it from anybody, right? I dealt with it, right? I move forward. So by always thinking, future thinking, where do I want to be? What are my aspirations going forward? Now I'm looking at public speaking. I'm looking at doing a TED Talk. I'm looking at trying to influence 1,000 people in the next 6 months that I can influence and say, hey, I can help you get better. Here's something that happened to me. Take some of the parts of my story and be able to use it for yourself. Take some of the things that I've done, learn from them, and help yourself and get better.
You mentioned gratitude, or you mentioned journaling, but gratitude journaling or finding positivity. At Take 2 Minutes, I've done a few focus groups, and I found this was very enlightening to me. One of the focus groups, or actually two of the focus groups, I had all the individuals gratitude journal for 30 days straight in the morning, ideally. And the people who weren't good at gratitude journaling are the ones who I had found who didn't know or had not gratitude journaled in the past. I had them do the Take 2 Minutes Gratitude Challenge. And the idea behind the challenge is the challenge sends you something for which you should be grateful for and asks you to write a statement about why you're grateful for it. Ultimately, though, all participants, and there was about, in the two focus groups, 33 total participants, all of them recognized after about 2 weeks of gratitude journaling every morning, whether they were doing it on their own or part of the challenge, that they naturally started recognizing more things which they're grateful for every day past that. And it was really, in my mind, a beautiful thing to hear the feedback from these complete strangers who were saying things like, wow, I've been doing this for 2 weeks now, and now when I go out, I just notice things that I'm grateful for, notice things that I like. My mind is being attracted to those things. So tomorrow morning, I have all these things I want to write about. And that was truly beautiful for me to know that it's actually helping people get into that mindset of recognizing gratitude. And to what you said, it doesn't ever mean that every day is going to be rainbows and butterflies and glorious, right? There's always going to be challenges in life. But once you get into that practice of recognizing positivity, recognizing gratitude, it's easier to dig yourself out of the negativity spirals that are going to happen in life.
Yeah. Like one of the key things you said was it took a couple of weeks. And what they say within research, it takes 21 days to ingrain a habit. Yeah. For me, journaling, I have missed 1 day by accident, as it turns out. I've missed 1 day in over 3 years.
Oh, wow.
I don't miss journaling. I do it every day. It doesn't matter where I am, doesn't matter what I'm doing. I get up an hour earlier than I normally do, and I journal and meditate first thing in the morning, and that is part of my habit, that's part of my routine. And I never fail with it because I know I need it. I needed to have it because I needed my mindset to be in the right place to get better. And I went out with gusto.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Keep going.
It's okay.
I was just going to say, I love what you said about even if it's a small thing like the smell of rain or anything, it doesn't have to be profound thoughts. It just recognize things that you enjoy in life, the smell of coffee in the morning, maybe, whatever it may be. Everyone has something they can find joy in. You just got to recognize it a little bit, and that can really help you get into a positive mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some common misconceptions about trauma recovery you've encountered?
One of the things I find is the stigma behind how other people portray you or how they see you when they see you. It's just happened to some of the people I thought were closest to me. Physically, actually, literally did this to me, where they stopped talking to me out of fear.
Wow.
Fear that something they would say would trigger me. They didn't know what to say. They knew some of the stories. Some didn't know the whole story. Some only knew bits and pieces. Knew that I was in a car accident, somebody was killed, yada, yada. And they don't know what to say. We're not broken is the biggest message I guess I could say. An accident happened. It doesn't make me broken. What it does, it makes me a little cracked. I got some things to heal, but I'm not broken. You're not going to send me into a suicide state by talking to me. What you're going to do is when you suddenly ignore me and you stay away from me, that's going to be more upsetting than anything you may say to me. Right? And it's pretty simple of what you do with them. They say, if I know you've been in an accident and everything, if it's something that you want to talk about, I'd be interested in listening, but you don't have to. Like, set them at ease that it's okay. You don't need to talk about what happened. I'm not here to pry and try and get the gory details. People have innate curiosity, right? And that's just normal for people. But it's amazing how many people I've run into in my life that never talk about it and never comes up because they just don't know what to say. They don't know how to approach a topic because they're scared. You think you're scared. What do you think I feel like?
Right.
Right. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. Like, I get it. I understand that. So I try to put people at ease, saying, yeah, what have you been up to lately? I do a lot of public speaking, and I kind of leave it at that and let them see if they are interested in exploring the topic. I approach it first from my standpoint as being a person with the trauma. But it's in basically for me, it's coaching my family, coaching my friends, coaching the people I run into on it's okay to talk to me. It's okay to mention it. Right? You're not going to upset me. It's okay. And just putting their mind at ease, because I know what they're going through. I can understand it. Right.
What advice do you give people who feel overwhelmed by their situations and believe they can't control the outcomes?
What do you mean by outcome?
If they can't control, so people quite often will have anxiety about things that are upcoming. You talked about, or depression about things in the past, and those are. It's either an outcome that's already happened, you just said you can't change it, or if it's anxiety, all the what ifs aren't going to fix what's going to happen. I think I'm just asking what kind of advice you give those people who fall into those situations and help them get out of it.
Don't give up and seek those people that have techniques that are going to help. Like, I understood that early on. I reached out to somebody through my healthcare provider to get a counselor that very next day. I'm on my way home. My parents came and picked me up, and I called my healthcare provider to get help because I knew I needed to. And the police officer that was on the scene told me, he goes, you may feel not too bad now. Within a couple of days, you're not going to feel good and you're going to start to collapse. And he goes, it's just human nature. He goes, you need to talk to someone, get help. Don't just try and fight it yourself. That's really, from our experience, that doesn't work, especially with our line of work. Like, they see all sorts of stuff and they do it themselves, even police officers. They go through counseling too, because some of the stuff they see is horrific. Right. So and there's a little bit different style of trauma, but it's for them, it's what they see, not so much what they physically experience. They don't see the accident, they see the aftermath, but still, It's still traumatizing, right? So one of the biggest things you could do is, even if NLP is maybe not something that may work, there's CBT, right? Cognitive behavioral theory, right? There's other theories out there that can help. Just find the right person you can connect with to try some of those techniques, but never give up, because no one's ever that broken. I don't believe that, because there's ways of controlling our minds. There's ways of controlling how we think and how we do things. We can always get better. Just giving up on yourself it's just going to get worse if you try doing that. Right. You need to be able to stay in that positive mindset to say, no, I will try the next thing. That didn't work. Okay, I will try the next thing. Some of the people I do presentations with are those with actual diagnosed mental health issues, schizophrenia, bipolar, etc. And some of them, it has taken 5 years of work to find a medication that helps. Some people have to go to the medication route because it's a diagnosed illness. It's a little different than PTSD. Like, I didn't need anything from that perspective for me, but there's those who may have to go that route and just seek a professional to, okay, this is something that will help. Maybe it won't, maybe it will. We'll try it. The one person I do presentations with took 5 years, multiple different things they tried, and finally found something that, oh my God, I feel wonderful now. They found something that worked between the counseling and the medication that they were taking. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. It's just sometimes it just may take a little while to find the one that fits.
Right. And I say that oftentimes in other podcasts that I'm on. I'm going to reiterate what you just said, and that is, there are a lot of options out there, and there's different levels of options. Take 2 minutes is kind of a self-help option, and it works for some people. It's not going to work for everyone. There's no one thing that's going to work for everyone. You have the option of therapists, counselors, and then you have medicines, as you mentioned. Then you even have like ketamine therapy and microdosing. But I think everyone has to keep trying something and find out what works for them. And even if you're taking something small or taking a small path like meditations, there's a lot of different ways to meditate. So just because you don't like the first experience with meditation, don't give up on it. Try a different type of meditation. Try a different, service. There's many meditation services. Yeah, different teachers.
YouTube,
that's what.
Right?
Yeah.
Lots of them on YouTube.
Take 2 minutes offers meditations. And I tell people, use them. If you don't like them, that's okay. It doesn't mean that, I'm not trying to solve everyone's problem. I'm trying to give people another option for how to do some of this stuff. And that's what it's all about, is trying until you find something that works for you. But definitely don't give up. Definitely keep trying, because there is going to be a way for you to feel better, but you have to give it some effort and find the right program for you.
Yeah. And we can't tell you what will work, what won't work. We can't tell you how long it's going to take.
Right.
Everybody's a little bit different. And it's just, it takes what it takes. You just need to be persistent. And like you said, be resilient.
Yes.
Right.
Is there anything that we didn't cover about your story or what you do or your public speaking? Anything else you want to talk about?
That covers the bulk of it. That's a lot. We've been talking for a while.
No,
yeah, there are other strategies. They don't give away everything, but yeah, there's other stuff I have done that I have tried. Some didn't work. I openly admit it, but I don't leave it out of my book either. My book doesn't cover everything. It would be really long trying to do that, but I do highlight a lot of areas that I do try. Perspective is one. That's part of the mindfulness piece. Your perspective on how you get through your day early on for me was rather critical, because I would try to stop things from triggering me, because that was my issue. Going back, trigger. I can't keep doing that. It was frustrating. But I find just normal driving, what do you find people do when you get cut off in traffic? What's the first thing people do? Flip the bird, blow up, start screaming, yelling at the guy. They pull up behind them, honk their horn, and just terrorize them. But that wasn't helping me. That was putting me in that trigger state and putting me to level 10. It's like, okay, well, so I had to stop. So I flipped it on its head. I did the opposite. Somebody cuts me off. I go, what's their day like?
Yes. Thank you.
I know what I was doing. I know what my day's like. I know what they just did to me. But they just cut me off. Chances are 9 times out of 10, it's not intentional. Maybe it's a father of three young children whose wife just asked him for a divorce. He's now going to have to go through all of that with young kids. His job's not going well. His boss has been giving him hell. He may lose his job. He's having a really, really bad day. If I blow up at him, what does that do to him? Do I want somebody doing that to me in the state that I'm in? And as soon as I took that perspective, everything changed. That stopped that trigger. That trigger stopped happening. Any sort of thing happening during the day, it's like, they just may not be having that great a day either. So why would I get upset at them? I don't want somebody doing that to me, so I will walk a mile in their shoes.
I absolutely love that you said that, because I was going to respond with, when it comes to anything that's an external factor, I try not to let it arouse me. It's hard for some people to get over that, but things usually aren't directed at you. It's because someone else is going through a tough time, and you're a circumstance in their path. And if you let it bother you, you're really doing more damage to yourself than anything. I had a situation just even a couple of days ago. I was trying to get into a turn lane, and the car in front of me, I could just get between him and the curb to get into the turn lane. And when he saw me trying, he edged over to get in my way. Why did he do it? I don't know. He kept me from turning right. And so my first instinct was, well, what's this guy doing? And then I thought, what does it matter? So I'm going to sit here for another minute instead of, going into that turn lane right this second. It's not going to affect me much. And I didn't let it affect me. I didn't honk my horn. I didn't do anything, because who knows why he did it. It probably wasn't directed at me. He probably was frustrated at something else. There's no reason why he'd be frustrated at me. I didn't know the guy, right? So it's those situations, you can't let them get to you. You can't let them aggravate you, because you're not doing yourself a service at that point. You're letting an external factor you can't control affect how you feel. And that's never going to end up to be a good situation.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
Yeah, so I'm very much
earlier about anxiety on worrying about stuff in the future, and that reminded me of a stat that I'd read. And I went on a reading binge back in 2021. I was on a reading binge, so I started a business and everything, and I heard from the stuff I'd read that the most successful people in the world are voracious readers. So I went, okay, let's test that theory. So I said, I'll read a book a week for the entire year. I read 56 books that year. Right. So it's like, yeah, I actually beat my goal by a couple bucks. So it actually was, it's fantastic. I learned so much. But this is part of what I learned is that when you look at what things you worry about on any given day, 80% of what you worry about happening never does.
Right.
So why did you waste the energy? Why did you waste the emotional upheaval on something that likely isn't even going to happen?
I like that. That's very true. Very true. So, Jacques, if you don't mind, one more time, give us the title of your book and where to find it again.
Driving Out of Darkness. Jacques Delorme is my name. Search the last name Delorme on Amazon. It works just fine. It's great. If you want the really cheap version for like $2.99, there's the Kindle version. There's the paperback. I like the paperbacks. I highlight stuff all the time when I'm learning things, and I grab the paperback. It's not really overly expensive. I try to use a little lighter on the pocketbook piece by staying paperback, not hardcover. They're more expensive. But it's grab the book, and there's links in it too to get a hold of me. I'm on social media with the name of my book as the tag. So at Driving Out of Darkness, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Pretty easy to DM me on any of those. A little bit of a glitch on my website I'm fixing, but that should still work as a contact form too, to get a hold of me pretty easily. Googling my name, you'll find me pretty easy. I'm online. I've done businesses in the past, like sports nutrition and stuff too. So my phone number is even out there. People could probably find it. So by all means, reach out. If there's something I can help with, you want to bounce an idea off of me, or you want to just have a chat, I have no issue doing that for anybody.
I don't think we covered your website URL. Can you state that?
Driving Out of Darkness is one of them. The other one's not up yet. That one's just going to be my name. I'm in the process of developing that one. It's going to be launched, I'm hoping within the next month. And that'll be more of my speaker site, but also have resources. As I said, I was a voracious reader, so I will list books and kind of a little summary on each one on books I recommend that would really help, because all but I think 4 books that I read that year were all personal development books. Everything from Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins, to Simon Sinek, to you name it. I covered the whole gambit, a whole lot of different resources that I found helped with trying to change my mindset and changing different parts of my life. When I started attacking and trying to change things, it wasn't just the accident. I actually found that I dug into everything else too. So I got a pretty wide gambit of information I could pass on to people.
And you mentioned you're working on a TED Talk. Any idea when that may be?
Yeah, I'll probably have it done within the next couple of months. And then it's the matter of, I need to get into a TED site. But because of where I live, there's not many near me. There's 3 in Saskatchewan. So it's like, I'm going to have to likely travel. So it's going to matter of finding one that's within a decent travel distance and then trying to get accepted. It sometimes takes a while to get in. So I may hire somebody to help me with trying to get in a little quicker. But yeah, especially with my story, I think I should be able to get one fairly quickly. Yeah.
We might look for that in early 2025, possibly.
Yeah, hoping that should be about the right timing. Yeah.
Good. Well, I very much appreciate you taking the time to be on here today and sharing your story and all the knowledge you've gained over the past 3 years and sharing that knowledge with some of the viewers. Thank you for your time today.
Oh, thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Jacques.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. I hope you found that discussion helpful and interesting. If there are any topics you would like to hear discussed, head over to take2minutes.org and use the Contact Us form to submit your suggestions. Also, if you appreciate our content, sign up for an account at take2minutes.org. Subscriptions help us to continue generating new content. Thanks again.